Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Truckers Against Trafficking is continuing to expand its reach beyond the United States. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford speaks with the group's executive director about its annual report and how the organization is growing and working to educate truck drivers, law enforcement, and the public about human trafficking. For several years, the oil company Shell has undertaken an experiment. The company has developed a truck they call the Starship, which they use to demonstrate new or innovative technologies for the trucking industry. I'll discuss this year's version of the truck with Ryan Manthiri, the project lead for Starship at Shell. And finally, San Francisco has become a testing ground for autonomous vehicle technology, and that raises a simple and direct question. How is the test going? I'll discuss that and the implications it has for federal policy with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today, a state of emergency is in effect in Southern California, where the remnants of Hurricane Hilary left behind a path of destruction. Millions are under flood warnings, thousands are without power, and more problems could be on the way. The emergency means some commercial drivers are granted relief from certain hours of service regulations, fuel transporters in particular. The waivers are in effect for 30 days or the duration of the emergency. Hilary was the first tropical storm to hit Southern California in 84 years. During a news conference, Governor Gavin Newsom said the storm is presenting a unique set of challenges for the state.
It's certainly interesting times. Tornadoes, lightning strikes. I've got CAL FIRE worried about wildfires because of the winds, not just the tornadoes. Walk out of the OES, the Office of Emergency Services in San Bernardino, check my phone and learn about an earthquake that originally came in at 6.0, appears to be close to 5.1. There were over 13 aftershocks just in the drive over in the Ventura region. These are certainly interesting times.
California may have gotten the worst of this, but the state is hardly alone. Hilary also poured rain on other states out west, including Nevada, Oregon, and as far north as Idaho. Meanwhile, federal regulators have waived some regulations in Hawaii following the wildfires there. The USDOT's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration has issued an emergency waiver order regarding hazardous materials regulations for qualifying carriers operating in the state. It's set to run through mid-October. The wildfires in Hawaii have killed more than 100 people, making it the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than 100 years, and hundreds of others are still reported missing. A new bidder has entered the fray to acquire Yellow Corp's terminals. Old Dominion Freight Line is offering $1.5 billion. That exceeds Estes Express Line's previous offer by about $200 million. Both are stalking horse bids, meaning the higher offer sets the lowest price that the 169 total terminals would get at a Chapter 11 auction. Heeding the call of state officials, Cruise is cutting in half its fleet of robotaxis in San Francisco. Late last week, California's Department of Motor Vehicles asked Cruise parent company for the reduction after one of its vehicles, without a human driver on board, crashed into a fire truck. The DMV says the change means there will be no more than 50 driverless vehicles in operation during the day and no more than 150 driverless vehicles in operation at night. It's the latest chapter in the ongoing saga surrounding driverless taxis in San Francisco. Earlier this month, a state commission gave Cruise and Waymo the green light to run their robotaxis on San Francisco streets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's despite repeated concerns from the public and state officials about the safety implications, especially as they pertain to emergency vehicles. That concern played out in reality on August 17th. That's when the Cruise vehicle and the fire truck collided. The crash is under investigation. The San Francisco Chronicle reports the robotaxi had a green light, entered an intersection, and was hit by a fire truck that was responding to a call with its lights and siren on. The Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance's annual Brake Safety Week is underway across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. As is the case every year around this time, inspectors are out in full force performing their regular duties. But as is also the case every year, they'll be especially focused on the brake systems of commercial vehicles, with an extra special focus this year on brake lining and pad violations. Brake Safety Week runs through Saturday. During last year's enforcement blitz, CVSA says some 38,000 inspections were conducted, and while more than 13% of those vehicles were placed out of service for critical brake-related violations, that of course means that 87% of the vehicles inspected passed. 5 more people have been indicted in the staged accident scheme known as Operation Sideswipe in the New Orleans area. The U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Louisiana says all 5 defendants were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Dozens of people have already been charged in connection to Operation Sideswipe, with many convicted and already sentenced. Federal officials believe there could have been up to 150 staged accidents in the scheme, which targeted commercial trucks. The criminals would initiate the crash, then file and collect on insurance claims that came to millions of dollars in total. The state of Texas is poised to invest a record amount of money in infrastructure over the coming years. Governor Greg Abbott made the announcement last week. The plan includes a 10-year, $100 billion program spearheaded by the Texas DOT, which includes projects that enhance safety and reduce congestion. The $142 billion total is $15 billion more than last year's. Road work in West Virginia is getting another shot in the arm. Governor Jim Justice recently called state legislators back for a special session to address economic policy and road work. The legislature approved 2 notable bills that focus on road revenue, which were quickly signed into law. Combined, they moved $150 million for maintenance work throughout the state. This is the 3rd time in as many years that state lawmakers approve legislation that taps money already available to boost transportation funding. The passage of this legislation brings the total state investment in roads to more than $2 billion since 2017. An Oregon-based less-than-truckload carrier has added its first battery-electric tractors to its fleet. Titan Freight Systems says it has taken delivery of 3 Freightliner e-Cascadias. To power them, 6 commercial charging stations have been installed at Titan's depot. Here's a new survey that probably won't surprise you. The survey by an online company called Compare the Market found that 81% of Americans have been involved in a crash caused by distracted driving. But perhaps more surprising, smartphones weren't blamed the most. The survey used a broad definition for distracted driving, including such factors as weather. Compare the Market said weather conditions were the biggest factor in distracted driving crashes, followed by eating or drinking. Dealing with children or pets came in 3rd. Writing or reading text messages was 4th on the list. The top 3 vehicles involved in distracted driving crashes, according to the survey, are the Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla, and Toyota Camry. And finally, hats off to Illinois State Senator Willie Preston, who came to the aid of a trucker whose semi flipped onto its side in Chicago earlier this month. Preston said he was driving by the scene when he noticed a group of people recording something with their phones. Then he noticed the truck, which had smoke coming out of it. He quickly pulled over, got out, noticed the driver stuck inside, and got to work. Using a tool he had in his car, Preston broke the windshield and helped the driver out. After making sure that trucker was okay, Preston returned to his car. And then kudos as well to a group of construction workers in Phoenix who found themselves in a similar situation this past week. Sky 12 reports they were on the job near US 60 and Interstate 10 when they saw a crash and took off running down a hill to help. They got there, found a jackknife trailer, and got to work using their equipment to take the door off the truck, all to pull the driver out. One of those workers later said the driver was lucky and that while he did suffer some broken ribs, it could have been much worse. And without that crew's quick action, it very well might have been. And that's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, Ashley Blackford speaks with Truckers Against Trafficking's executive director, and I'll discuss the latest version of the Shell Starship truck with Ryan Manthiri of Shell. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
For can't miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
When you weigh on a CAT scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Truckers Against Trafficking released its annual report earlier this year. Esther Gotch is the executive director for the nonprofit organization. She joins me now. Esther, starting off, can you explain to me about what Truckers Against Trafficking is and the goal of the organization?
Yeah, so Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT as we call it for short, is a national nonprofit that trains transportation professionals like truck and bus drivers on how to recognize and report human trafficking as part of their everyday jobs. So we like to say we're raising up the largest mobile army of eyes and ears out on the roads in order to aid in victim recovery.
Now, I know there can be some misconceptions when it comes to human trafficking with kind of how Hollywood depicts it, but can you explain what it can look like?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the main misconceptions that we know is pretty prevalent is that it always involves kidnapping. And while kidnapping certainly can and does occur, more often than not, victims typically have a pre-existing relationship with their trafficker. They could be an acquaintance, a romantic partner, or even a family member. And so oftentimes victims, before they're trafficked, go through a pretty long grooming period of time where they form deep bonds and trust with the person that then becomes their trafficker or victimizers. And, part of what traffickers are looking for is vulnerabilities. Those could be physical vulnerabilities like shelter, food, poverty, homelessness, disabilities, displacement, or lack of documentation, children in the foster care system or runaways. But they could also be emotional or relational vulnerabilities. So, if you think about teenagers feeling maybe lonely or isolated or just wanting to be accepted or loved. It could be folks coming out of abusive homes, individuals who may be experiencing pressure or disapproval from home or in the community, or if there's a separation from family or lack of access to education or employment, that's where that trafficker steps in, right, and makes promises of a better life, of love, of care, of safety, whatever that victim is in need of, that trafficker is going to look to fill that void.
Now, Truckers Against Trafficking released the 2022 Impact Report earlier this year. What's the purpose of the report and what kind of data is collected and published?
Yeah, so specifically in our 2022 Impact Report, we really wanted to highlight kind of the breadth and depth of the organization at this point in our history, as well as the exceptional partners that have come alongside and really promoted TAT's mission and led to the success that we're at now. So, we started as an organization really focused on training truck drivers specifically, and that's still very much the heart of what we do. But over the past 14 years, we've expanded quite significantly to include additional members of the transportation industry. So the bus industry, the energy industry, we train law enforcement and public sector partners. And our reach now is across North America, so including Canada and Mexico. So in the 2022 Impact Report, we really look to capture that breadth of the work that TAT does. And also, as I mentioned, to really celebrate the partnerships that have deepened over the years. One of the things that we were really excited to spotlight in the 2022 report was just how so many of the partners that we've been working with for many years just had this sort of leveling up in terms of the investments that they're putting towards this cause and fighting human trafficking, whether that's their time or experience or resources. Many of our partners have not only done significant and ongoing training within their companies, but have also adopted policies and protocols to fight demand for commercial sex and really have a zero tolerance policy. So all of those things, come through in the report, and it's an opportunity just to showcase the work that has been done over the past year and really celebrate where we've come from.
And compared to 2021, what were some of the changes the organization saw?
Yeah, so we continue to build our library of training resources by creating a training video for movers and in-home delivery personnel, recognizing that they're in and out of people's homes and communities and are often in unique positions to see signs of human trafficking and report it. We also saw a significant increase in our work in Canada as travel reopened post-COVID restrictions, and industry partners there really began to learn about TAT's work. So in 2022, we saw a 117% increase in TAT-trained professionals in Canada from the end of 2021, which is really significant. We also did a number of different initiatives to collect data from our school transportation partners and some truck drivers via some of our company partners. And what that does is it really helps us better understand what drivers are actually seeing in regards to this crime. So collecting data from our partners and from frontline professionals is critical in helping us continue to understand the key intersections between this crime and those individuals. And then lastly, after 12 years of founding and leading the organization, Candace Paris, TAT's former executive director, and TAT's board of directors handed over the leadership reins to me as the new executive director. So it was no small task with a growing team, expanding programs, and reaching new borders. But our partners, staff, board, and stakeholders have all been really tremendous in helping just continue to carry on the good work being done.
And can you talk to me, you referenced some of these, but can you talk to me more about the efforts TAT has to train industry professionals?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, TAT really specializes in industry-specific training on human trafficking for transportation stakeholders. And we make sure that it's always free, easy to use, and readily available. What we have found is that when people understand how this crime shows up in their everyday lives and how they may be interacting or observing potential victims in the course of their everyday jobs, they're better positioned to make a difference and in some cases help save a life. So in our report, we highlight a short video that features a survivor of sex trafficking, Nikki. And her powerful story really illustrates why this training is so important. Within her story, obviously you hear about and learn the horrors of human trafficking that she was experiencing, but how a general manager at a truck stop nearby made all the difference in her life because he had been trained, he had compassion, he saw her with dignity, and his patience and kindness really helped her escape her trafficker. She credits, his kindness and quick thinking in saving her life that day. And that really is TAT in action. That's what it's all about.
Are you finding more companies and organizations are wanting to include TAT's education in their training?
Yeah, I do believe the more that people learn about this crime and the available resources that TAT already has, they're typically very excited to get involved. One of the things that we worked very hard to do as an organization is to make it as easy as possible for companies to train and get involved, because we know that this is not their day job, right? And so we want to make getting involved, making a difference as easy as possible. So as you can see in our report and on our website, to date, TAT has trained over 1.5 million industry professionals on human trafficking, and that number is always growing.
And why is it so important that, truck drivers specifically be equipped with at least some knowledge on human trafficking?
Yeah, I truly believe it will take all of us doing our part to stop human trafficking. And so it starts with understanding really what drives this crime. And that's important for everyone to know and for truck drivers to know that if there were no demand for commercial sex, there would be no victims of sex trafficking. It's also critical for people everywhere, including truck drivers who are everywhere, to know that it's just by making a call, they might save a life, that they can make a huge difference. So we're not asking, folks to attempt to rescue or recover victims. We're simply asking them, when you see something, when you see multiple indicators, make that call to the authorities and report what you're seeing. Oftentimes survivors say they felt invisible during their exploitation, like no one knew what was going on and no one cared. So we must know and we must care.
And I know you have a library of resources. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have a documentary-style training video library. We also have wallet cards, posters, window decals, dash stickers, and more. And we've developed these training suites for members of the trucking industry. So that includes specific training for over-the-road drivers, final mile drivers, and those movers and in-home delivery personnel. That training applies to truck and travel plaza employees. Like I mentioned, we've had multiple truck stop employees who, because of their training, have aided in the recovery of victims of human trafficking. We also have training suites available for the bus industry, including transit, charter, and school bus drivers, as well as the energy sector, and that's called our Empower Freedom program. And then beyond industry, we also have training videos for law enforcement, videos that talk about fighting demand. And then we have a whole host of short, video vignettes of stories from either survivors or actually truck drivers themselves in terms of what this crime has looked like and how they've gotten involved.
And what is the Freedom Drivers Project?
The TAT's Freedom Drivers Project is a 48-foot-long renovated show trailer that actually travels the country educating audiences about the realities of domestic sex trafficking and how these industries are driving change. So inside the mobile exhibit, there are survivor artifacts and stories. Our TAT training materials are there as well, and information about the push and pull factors of this crime. And then, of course, how everyone, no matter who you are, where you are, how you can get involved.
And in the report, it said 1,946 law enforcement officers were trained by TAT in 2022. Is that a number you hope to see continue to grow? And how often does TAT work with law enforcement?
Yeah, so early on in this work, we recognized that, hey, if we were out there training frontline workers to report what they're seeing, we needed to also ensure that ethical law enforcement would respond with a victim-centered approach. So that really is what launched our law enforcement training back in 2016, where we do have a video training for law enforcement, but that 1,000 number are actually officers who have sat through 4 hours of in-person training with TAT's deputy director and one of our TAT training specialists. And so we do hope that number will grow. We do have plans to continue to train law enforcement, both virtually and in person, because they also play a critical role, right, in having that victim-centered approach, in building protocols that are going to protect the victim and bring those perpetrators to justice.
One of the things mentioned in the report is the impact of survivors sharing their stories, which you touched on earlier. Can you talk to me about, just the importance of hearing from victims and their perspective?
Having survivor input, training, and experiences is truly critical to any effective anti-trafficking work. Not only do they help humanize the issue, but they bring the reality of it to our audiences, and they offer invaluable training and input into every aspect of our work. So TAT has survivors on staff that we learn from every day. We also have survivors as advisors to our organization, and they truly play an integral role in helping develop programs, training our audiences on an ongoing basis, including our law enforcement training is done by a training specialist who's a survivor. And they make an impact through their experience, expertise, and insights in just truly immeasurable ways.
That was Esther Gotch talking about Truckers Against Trafficking's 2022 annual report. For more information, you can visit truckersagainsttrafficking.org. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
For several years, the oil company Shell has undertaken an experiment. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Reddig. Welcome back to the program. The company has developed a truck they call the Starship, which they use to demonstrate new or innovative technologies for the trucking industry. This year, they plan yet another of those trucks. Past versions have focused in part on advanced aerodynamics, and that is part of the latest version as well. But this year, they're also taking a step forward in terms of the fuel they're using to run the truck. I talked with Ryan Manthiri, the project lead for Starship, about the company's plans for this year and some of the science behind the project. For people who are unfamiliar, I'm wondering if you can start off by talking a little bit about the history of the Shell Starship project. What is the project and how did this all start?
Yeah, sure. So we started the initiative back in 2018 when we developed the first truck. It essentially began as a material demonstration of how the industry could work together to kind of drive significant reductions in energy usage and CO2 emissions. So we launched that truck in 2018. I think the first run made its inaugural demonstration run in May that year, where we did a coast-to-coast run from San Diego all the way to Florida. So it's a 2,300-mile run. And we debuted the results or released the results at ACTEX the following year.
Okay, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the advances in technology and design that have been part of the project, because I know this whole thing has been about trying out new and different things, established technologies, and so on and so forth. What are some of the major ones in your mind?
So the truck itself is designed around this concept called freight ton efficiency. So in order to basically maximize on this metric, which is essentially we want to carry the maximum allowable payload using the smallest amount of energy possible. And to enable that, we've designed the truck around four key principles. The first is a process called lightweighting, where we try to strip as much weight off the truck as possible. With these Class 8 trucks, you have a gross vehicle weight of around 80,000 pounds. So that's tractor, trailer, payload inclusive. And really, if you want to go heavier on your payload, you need to pull as much weight off your base setup as possible. So we look specifically at the tractor and the trailer, and we try to optimize our weight across the powertrain, driveline, chassis, and that extends into the aerodynamic package and the tire selection. And that's just one mechanism. The second is around reducing these opposing forces on the truck, and there's two significant forces acting on the truck. The first is rolling resistance. That's basically the force that's created by the flexing of the tire sidewalls as it rotates under load. So there's an energy loss there as the tire basically rolls through its footprint. And that energy loss has to be overcome by the vehicle's engine. So that you have an element of fuel wastage in that component. So for tire selection, we're using low rolling tire resistance tires across both the tractor and trailer setup. So these are specially formulated tread compounds that are more resistant to heat generation, and they're designed to basically minimize your tire deflection. So that's just one of the forces. The second is drag. And if you look at our truck, we've got a very unique cab design. So it's a custom-built, lightweight, aerodynamic carbon fiber cab. And as you transition, if you move from the front to the back, you'll see between the tractor and the trailer, we have an automatic gap sealer that covers that tractor-trailer gap, basically deploys panels from the back of the cab to cover that gap at highway speeds. So it just essentially ensures that you have these smooth body lines as the air flows from the front of the truck and transitions to the trailer. And then along the sides of the trailer, you have these full-length side skirts, which minimize air underneath the truck. And then to round the package off at the end, you have a custom boat tail, which is basically, it's designed to reduce the drag that's caused, by there's a low-pressure wake created behind the trailer as the air exits the rear of the truck. So that's the boat tail basically reduces that turbulent zone at the rear of the truck. And when all of these components are kind of working together in unison, it drops our coefficient of drag down to around 0.25. Now, to put that in context, if our CFD is 0.25, if you look at the traditional box-shaped tractor on the road, it sits around 0.6. So it effectively means Starship's aerodynamic drag is more than half that of the traditional truck layout from the road. So all of that has a significant effect on fuel economy. The third principle is around tank-to-wheel efficiency. So obviously with 2.0, we try to optimize our powertrain as best as possible. We have a very lightweight and durable engine, heavy-duty engine in there in Cummins' next-gen 2020 X15 engine. It's a diesel ICE, and it was paired with an Eaton Endurant. So, for the purpose of what we were trying to do, which was go as heavy as possible in the highest gear using the lowest engine speed, you need a lubricant selection across the truck's powertrain and driveline that's going to withstand that type of heavy-duty cycle. So in the engine, we have Shell's Rotella T6 Ultra 5W30. That's a FA4 fuel-efficient lubricant. It's got a lower high-temperature, high-shear viscosity range, and that allows us to get that better or improved fuel economy, and it even provides the protection at these increased loads. And then similarly on the transmission, we have Shell Spyrex S6GXME 75W80. That's a fuel-efficient, long-life gear oil, and it's designed for the needs of these heavy-duty gearboxes. And then last, to round out the fourth pillar, basically, in terms of the design considerations that go into this truck, we have the cab, and the cab's a very uniquely designed. It's driver-centric, so we have safety features and in-cab devices and telematics that are there in the truck to improve on operational efficiency and driving habits. So whether you're an experienced or novice driver, the truck is there to kind of adapt to your skill and ability. So features like the collision mitigation system that helps the driver avoid potential hazards on the road. We have digital cameras and heads-up displays that are replace your traditional review mirrors. So you have a wider field of view. You eliminate all of those blind spots. And then you have the predictive cruise control. That's essentially your look-ahead feature. So it previews the road ahead, analyzes the approaching terrain, and then it automatically selects the gear. So it adjusts the speed of travel to provide the best fuel economy. So again, it's all dependent on where you sit as a driver in terms of your skill level. But the truck is basically designed to accommodate the driver. So yeah, those are the kind of four key pillars, and obviously there's a lot more detail in that, but that's just a high-level snapshot.
You're moving to an X15N natural gas engine. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what you can tell us about the engine and the fuel it runs on. Just give us kind of an overview of that part of the technology. Yeah, so we're currently working on the third iteration of the Starship program, which is under this banner called Starship 3.0. And it's basically being built around a natural gas powertrain, and we have the infrastructure and the lubricants to support it. But, just going back from an energy transition perspective, the why behind the how, if you look at where the sector is right now, from an energy supply and demand, in terms of the decarbonization journey, the fact that natural gas has been taking more of an increasing role in energy supply over the past decade. Then you have the maturation of the natural gas fuel supply and the maintenance infrastructure that's there to support the customer now. The benefits of natural gas fuels and natural gas vehicles as a whole, not just from a total cost of ownership perspective, but even more so from a environmental standpoint, with being able to run on renewable natural gas. It made sense for us to kind of transition, or for the next step for Starship to be a natural gas platform. So Starship 3.0 will be powered by Cummins' new X15 natural gas engine, along with other, freight ton efficiency promoting technologies, and it will be run Shell renewable natural gas, which is currently, commercially available, and we'll be utilizing
Shell's Rotella low-friction lubricants to kind of leverage the performance gains for the truck along the run. With the added benefit of being able to run on renewable natural gas, you have a more sustainable output here, because this is effectively the methane that's coming from the RNG is basically a gas that's produced from methane. And the methane is coming from the decomposition of either agricultural, food, or water waste. And because in the production of RNG, you're capturing this methane and you're redirecting it away from the environment, you're essentially repurposing it as clean, green energy. And this is where that carbon neutral, and in some cases the low carbon claim comes from. I think also with natural gas, because it's such a fungible energy source, it can be stored as either CNG, compressed natural gas, or liquefied natural gas. So it's a very versatile fuel. So for us, it just made sense because of where the sector is right now, and the fact that the infrastructure is there to support a demonstration like this. It justified the move to a natural gas powertrain.
With so many people talking about electric trucks right now, why go with natural gas over that? Or were you at a stage in the process where the electric talk kind of came after you were already developing this truck?
Yeah, so what you have to understand with where this whole decarbonization journey, we like to think of it as a mosaic of solutions, right, that are going to help us get us to that goal, which is basically, the commercial road freight sector is essentially responsible for about 9% of global CO2 emissions. And with these new carbon emission regulations on the horizon, it's going to have to reduce by, I think, 60% by 2050. So that's a more than 80% reduction in emission intensity from the sector in less than 30 years, which is very aggressive. And then that challenge is made more complex by the fact that road freight is going to double, more than double by 2050. So you have this added challenge, if you will, of there's already the vast number of trucks, legacy trucks, diesel trucks that are in the global fleet. And in order to meet those new emission abatement targets, you're going to have the global fleet will need to have to shift and transition to these zero emission technologies like the renewable natural gas, like the hydrogen fuel cell and the battery electric vehicles. And you're starting to see a lot of focus on prioritizing investments in those clean alternate energies. But you also have to recognize that there's this time to materiality for these technologies. So they have to be properly tested, de-risked. There has to be a maintenance and fueling infrastructure in place to support the customer, and that's going to take time. So coming back to your question about battery electric vehicles, the infrastructure for these, especially for the long-haul Class 8 trucks, it's not there yet. Even the charging network, it's not there at the moment. But that's where Starship is really well positioned. It's driving meaningful conversations and discussions on the here and now. We want to showcase the technologies and solutions that fleets can use today to help make a dent or impact in the sector's emissions profile. So natural gas is one of those pathways, and it's available and it's ready today.
Okay. I know that you had a cross-country trip planned. Is that taking place?
Oh, yeah. So the build is due to be complete end August, first week in September, and we aim to execute a demonstration run towards the end of September this year.
Okay. What sort of result are you looking for in terms of the performance of the truck?
So really to kind of leverage or demonstrate the story around freight ton efficiency, and that's how it's evolved, especially with the different powertrains that are coming out today. This is still a relevant platform to develop trucks around. But we'll be evaluating the truck against freight ton efficiency, fuel economy performance, as well as looking at the emissions profile that a natural gas truck generates versus your typical diesel. And that contrast is what we're looking to drive home in terms of illustrating the offset you get and the benefit you get from transitioning your fleet to a natural gas setup.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Again, that was Ryan Manthiri, the project lead for Starship, talking about Shell's latest version of the Starship truck. We'll be back in just a moment with more of our program. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. more miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now. Welcome back. San Francisco has become a testing ground for autonomous vehicle technology, and that raises a simple and direct question. How is that test going? Here to discuss that and the implications it has for federal policy is Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Bryce, how are you doing?
Mark, I'm good. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you. Now, this is kind of an interesting situation in San Francisco, and it had to be San Francisco, I guess, of all places. Course. But talk a little bit about the situation with autonomous cars there. What has the record of autonomous vehicles been of late in San Francisco?
Yeah, so for a while now, we've seen these autonomous vehicles deployed to a number of different cities. And up to this point, for the most part, they've been operated with a safety driver in the vehicle. But more recently, San Francisco has moved to, or they've allowed vehicles or had vehicles that are operating without safety drivers. And earlier this month, the state basically made a decision to allow even more driverless vehicles to operate in San Francisco, and that was over the objection of local leaders in the city. So what we're seeing is the, at least, in the last week or so, proliferation of driverless vehicles on the road, also carrying passengers, not just employees of the company, but carrying, the general public from place to place.
Now, there's been action by the California Public Utilities Commission and also the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Walk us through what those two agencies have done in reaction to what's been happening there.
Yeah, and so it's whiplash. It changed over the course of a few days. I guess about 2 weeks ago, it's the California Public Utilities Commission allowed the expansion of driverless taxi services from Cruise, which is a General Motors company, to expand to more services during the daytime. But then just this weekend, after two new incidents, the California DMV asked Cruise to roll back the number of driverless taxis that they had on the road. And the issues that prompted that were a crash involving a fire truck, which also involved an injury, and also an incident of a driverless vehicle just driving into a paving project while the concrete was still wet. So I can't imagine this is the start that Cruise was looking for, less than a week after rolling out more of these vehicles to have these, pretty embarrassing and luckily not more serious incidents, as I think about it, especially the construction site one. I mean, it must be really terrifying for the people who are working those sorts of sites too, and everyone else who's out on the, sidewalks, roads, and everything else.
What has Cruise's response been to all of this action on the part of the state?
Yeah, it's all along it's frustrating because this, the whole time we are going to do everything we can to be safe. We are going to be transparent as possible. And, in response to these most recent incidents, it says, Cruise has said that they will provide state officials with any data they need to reinforce the safety and efficiency of our fleets. I'm kind of tiring of the messaging from these companies. OOIDA at the federal level has pushed all along for more mandatory data reporting requirements, more transparency. So the rhetoric is not matching up to the action. It's also interesting that they describe this as reinforcing the safety and efficiency of our fleet. So, I know they've made a lot of claims about how we have 1 million miles of real world driving and how these vehicles are handling incidents better. But every time there's talk about there's 1 million miles or 1 million miles or more of safe driving, it just makes me think about truckers and OOIDA members who have millions of miles of safe driving, millions of miles of accident-free driving. And it just, I think, puts it into context of what they're really talking about here. The other thing that made me laugh, frankly, is, even after these incidents, cruises maintaining that their, the company and their services and their vehicles are still positively impacting, positively impacts overall road safety. So, am I thinking, well, at least they were running into the wet concrete and not, hitting a pedestrian or something like that? Is that what they're saying by these incidents here? So, I feel like it's kind of reaching a point where it's time for these technology and these companies to put up, the results and have the technology and the results match what they've been saying. Or sooner than later, I think more people are going to start asking questions, because all along it's been here. The company's saying, there's too many regulations, there's all these other problems, when in reality, it just seems like the technology is not yet there.
Well, let's bring this up to the national level, because there has been some action there. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has a project underway called AV Test, or the AV Test Initiative, dealing with this. Can you describe that situation for us?
Yeah, and basically it's an online tool, an online database, so that automated driving system developers can provide information to the system, and the public is able to view that information. And the intent behind this is to, help build public confidence, to validate what they're doing out on the roads. But again, the failing of this is that it is voluntary. So, it's hard to really it's impossible to get the full picture on this when you have voluntary information, because, while a company may think that an incident is not serious and not worthy of reporting, certainly it's something that the general public might be interested in.
Well, I know that OOIDA supported the general concept of AV tests, but there were some concerns that the association expressed. What were those?
Yeah, and really the concerns are about safety. It's hard to promote highway safety and promote the safety of our members when there's no way of knowing how these technologies are actually performing. So until NHTSA has mandatory data transparency from these manufacturers, it's frankly impossible to trust them, and I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for these manufacturers to get the public's trust with this. And, outside of the concerns that we voiced in the letter itself, I was taking a look at the online tool before we came on air here, and as best I can tell, and again, this is probably the same as anyone from the public would be taking a look at this, the reporting and the information that's on the AV test site doesn't seem to be the most up to date. Just taking a look at what the information they have on Cruise in San Francisco is, it still seems that they're saying it's being used for employee riders, still saying that there's in-vehicle safety operators in the vehicles, and it looks like the last this was updated was at the end of July. So we know that there's, with this reporting, with the decision of the state of California to allow more of these vehicles, there's already been changes. Certainly there may be an opportunity for NHTSA to update this tool, but it doesn't inspire confidence that when you have these pretty serious incidents happening, it's not reflecting in this tool that they say is supposed to build public trust.
Just a little bit of time left here, Bryce, but I did want to ask you, you mentioned the voluntary nature of this whole thing. Can NHTSA require the safety testing information to be turned over to the feds? Can the agency actually require them to give them that information so they can post it?
So that's been one of the points of contention between, what we would like to see done and what NHTSA says. And so NHTSA has said that they aren't able to require this data from the manufacturers. But, it's just really hard to wrap your head around for an agency that is charged with ensuring public safety with a broad mandate about the safe operation of vehicles, how they can't mandate the reporting of that information.
Okay, well, Bryce, we're out of time, but thank you very much for the information.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
I've been talking with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, of course, you should call your members of Congress about these important issues. They are being discussed at the federal level. You can do that by dialing up the U.S. Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.